The air is thick with anticipation and a nervous energy. Dim lights spill from the windows of Southwick House, a stately manor now serving as the Allied Supreme Headquarters. Inside, maps covered in intricate markings and colourful pins dominate every surface. Cigarette smoke hangs heavy in the air as General Dwight D. Eisenhower, his face etched with the weight of responsibility, paces slowly. Around large wooden tables, stern-faced officers in various Allied uniforms, British, American, Canadian, pore over intelligence reports and aerial photographs. The low murmur of hushed conversations blends with the rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway. Empty coffee cups and overflowing ashtrays bear witness to the long hours of meticulous planning. A large map of the Normandy coastline is prominently displayed, highlighting 5 designated landing zones: UTAA, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. Red arrows indicate planned troop movements, while blue markers denote naval deployments. Close-up shots reveal details on the map, the formidable defenses of the Atlantic Wall, German artillery positions, and the intricate network of hedgerows inland. Outside, under a starless sky, a convoy of military vehicles, jeeps, trucks loaded with equipment, and ambulances, moves with purposeful haste along winding country roads. Soldiers, their young faces a mixture of apprehension and determination, sit huddled together, their silhouettes barely visible in the darkness. The distant drone of Allied aircraft fills the night air, a constant reminder of the impending operation. The sheer scale of Operation Overlord, as the invasion was codenamed, was staggering. Years of meticulous planning had gone into every detail, from the selection of the landing beaches to the logistical nightmare of transporting hundreds of thousands of men and their equipment across the English Channel. The Allies had learned bitter lessons from previous amphibious assaults, and this time, they aimed for overwhelming force and meticulous coordination. Central to the planning was the element of surprise. The Allies knew that a direct assault on the most heavily fortified areas of the Pas de Calais, the region closest to England, was what the Germans expected. To counter this, a massive campaign of deception, codenamed Operation Fortitude, was launched. Fake armies, complete with inflatable tanks and dummy airfields, were created in southeastern England, reinforcing the German belief that the main invasion would come there. Double agents fed the enemy false intelligence, painting a picture of an imminent attack on Calais. The selection of Normandy, further west, offered several advantages, including weaker German defenses in certain sectors, and the element of surprise. However, it also presented significant challenges, including strong currents, tidal ranges, and the Bocage, the dense network of hedgerows and sunken lanes that crisscrossed the Norman countryside, offering ideal defensive positions for the enemy. Intelligence gathering was paramount. Aerial reconnaissance photographs provided crucial information about German fortifications, while commando raids gathered vital details about beach obstacles and terrain. Weather forecasts were scrutinized endlessly, as the success of the landings depended heavily on favorable conditions. A narrow window of opportunity around June 5 was identified, offering a combination of a full moon for paratrooper drops and low tide at dawn to expose German beach defenses. The logistical challenges were immense. Millions of tons of supplies, including vehicles, ammunition, food, and medical equipment, had to be stockpiled and transported to embarkation points along the southern coast of England. Specialized landing craft, designed to navigate shallow waters and deliver troops and vehicles directly onto the beaches, were built in vast numbers. The Mulberry harbors, artificial harbors that could be towed across the channel and assembled offshore, were a testament to Allied engineering ingenuity, designed to ensure a continuous flow of supplies after the initial landings. The men who would spearhead the assault, British, American, and Canadian infantrymen, paratroopers, and glider-borne troops, underwent rigorous training. They practiced amphibious landings, learned to navigate by compass, and familiarized themselves with the terrain they would face. The weight of expectation was immense, and the knowledge that the fate of Europe rested on their shoulders hung heavy in the air. As the night of June 5 drew on, a palpable sense of anticipation, mixed with fear, permeated the ranks. They were about to embark on the most audacious and consequential military operation in history. The vast expanse of the English Channel is a churning black void beneath a sliver of moon occasionally obscured by low-hanging clouds. Hundreds of Allied transport aircraft, C-47 Skytrains and Albemarles, drone steadily through the darkness, their navigation lights blinking like distant stars. Inside the cramped and noisy cabins, paratroopers, their faces blackened with camouflage paint, sit in tense silence. They check their equipment one last time, their static lines, their weapons, their escape kits. The air is thick with the smell of oil, and the nervous sweat of men bracing themselves for the unknown. A red light flashes above the jump door, followed by a piercing buzzer. The men rise, their movements practiced and efficient. The green light illuminates, and one by one they leap into the inky blackness, their silhouettes momentarily framed against the open doorway before disappearing into the night. Their parachutes blossom open above them like ghostly white flowers against the dark sky. Below the Norman countryside is a patchwork of dark fields and shadowy hedgerows. The wind catches the descending paratroopers, scattering them across a wider area than planned. Some land silently in open fields, while others crash through trees or splash down in flooded meadows. The sudden chaos of the drop is compounded by the darkness and the unfamiliar terrain. German anti-aircraft fire erupts sporadically, tracer rounds arcing through the night sky like angry fireflies. The muffled thud of explosions echoes across the landscape. Small groups of paratroopers, isolated and disoriented, begin to regroup, their initial objectives to secure key bridges, crossroads, and artillery batteries behind the beaches. Gliders, carrying vital reinforcements and heavy equipment, follow the paratroopers. They descend silently, like giant winged shadows, before crash landing in designated landing zones. The impact is often violent, and the gliders splinter and break apart, but the troops inside quickly emerge, ready to fight. The airborne assault was a critical component of the D-Day plan, designed to disrupt German defenses, seize key strategic locations, and prevent reinforcements from reaching the beaches. However, the darkness, the unexpected resistance, and the difficult terrain led to significant scattering of the paratroopers. Many found themselves far from their intended drop zones, and the carefully laid plans quickly began to unravel. Despite the chaos, small groups of paratroopers, displaying remarkable initiative and courage, began to fight their way towards their objectives. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Cole, commanding the 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment, led a daring bayonet charge against a German artillery battery that was shelling Utah Beach, earning him the Medal of Honor posthumously. Other paratroopers, though isolated and outnumbered, engaged German patrols, ambushed convoys, and sowed confusion behind enemy lines. The glider landings, while intended to deliver concentrated firepower and reinforcements, also faced significant challenges. Many gliders were shot down or crashed upon landing, resulting in casualties and the loss of vital equipment. However, those that landed successfully brought in much-needed anti-tank guns, mortars and engineers, who quickly set about clearing obstacles and securing landing zones. The actions of the airborne troops, though often fragmented and uncoordinated, played a crucial role in the overall success of D-Day. They disrupted German communications, tied down enemy reserves, and created a sense of uncertainty and confusion in the German high command. Their bravery and sacrifice in the darkness of the Norman night paved the way for the amphibious landings that would follow at dawn. They were the first wave, the tip of the spear, and their struggle against the odds set the stage for the brutal fighting that awaited the troops landing on the beaches. Their courage in the face of overwhelming uncertainty is a testament to the spirit and determination of the Allied forces. The eastern sky is beginning to lighten, casting a pale grey hue over the choppy waters of the English Channel. A massive armada of Allied warships and landing craft stretches as far as the eye can see, a steel leviathan poised to unleash its fury. The air is filled with the roar of naval gunfire, as the warships bombard the German defenses along the shoreline. Explosions erupt along the bluffs overlooking the beach, sending plumes of sand and smoke into the air. Waves crash against the ramps of the approaching landing craft, tossing them violently. Inside, American infantrymen, their faces grim and pale, clutch their rifles tightly. Many are seasick and terrified. The air is thick with the smell of diesel fuel and the metallic tang of fear. As the landing craft near the shore, the intensity of German fire increases dramatically. Machine gun bullets rake the water, sending up deadly sprays. Artillery shells explode around them, rocking the boats and sending shrapnel tearing through the air. As the ramps drop, exposing the men to the full fury of the German defenses, The scene erupts into unimaginable carnage. Soldiers are cut down in droves as they try to wade through the shallow water. The beach is a chaotic landscape of obstacles, barbed wire, wooden stakes topped with mines, and concrete bunkers spitting out a relentless hail of fire. The cries of the wounded mingle with the deafening roar of gunfire and explosions. Omaha Beach, the westernmost of the 5 landing zones assigned to the Americans, quickly became a scene of unimaginable horror. The pre-landing naval and aerial bombardment had failed to neutralize the heavily fortified German positions overlooking the beach. The terrain itself offered little cover for the attacking troops, who found themselves exposed on a wide open expanse of sand against a well-entrenched enemy. The first waves of infantry faced a maelstrom of fire from machine guns, mortars and artillery. German soldiers, sheltered in concrete bunkers and expertly positioned along the bluffs, poured a relentless stream of bullets into the advancing Americans. Landing craft were hit and disabled before they even reached the shore, their occupants killed or wounded. Those who made it to the beach found themselves pinned down behind meager obstacles, with no way to advance. The meticulous planning seemed to have broken down amidst the chaos. Units became mixed up, and communication was virtually impossible. Junior officers and non-commissioned officers rose to the occasion, displaying extraordinary leadership and bravery. They rallied their men, led small-scale assaults against German strongpoints, and improvised tactics to overcome the deadly obstacles. Engineers played a crucial role, attempting to clear paths through the beach defenses under heavy fire. Many were killed or wounded, but their efforts, however limited, eventually began to create small breaches in the German lines. Slowly, painstakingly, small groups of American soldiers began to fight their way off the beach, scaling the bluffs and engaging the enemy in fierce hand-to-hand combat. The situation on Omaha remained critical for hours. General Omar Bradley, aboard a command ship offshore, considered abandoning the landing. However, the sheer tenacity and courage of the American soldiers on the ground, coupled with the timely arrival of naval gunfire support that began to target the German bunkers more effectively, gradually turned the tide. By the end of the day, after suffering horrific casualties, the Americans had secured a precarious foothold on Omaha Beach. The bloody Omaha would forever be etched in the annals of military history, as a testament to the brutal realities of war and the extraordinary bravery of the men who fought there. In contrast to the carnage unfolding on Omaha, the landings on Utah Beach, the westernmost American landing zone, proceeded with relative efficiency. The paratroopers who had landed inland during the night had successfully disrupted German defenses and secured key causeways leading off the beach. As the first wave of assault troops landed, they faced lighter resistance than anticipated. American soldiers, supported by tanks that had managed to land relatively unscathed, quickly moved inland, following the planned routes. They encountered pockets of German resistance, but these were generally less formidable than those on Omaha. By midday, Utah Beach was largely secured, and the Americans were pushing inland, linking up with the paratroopers. Further east, on Gold Beach, the British assault faced its own challenges but ultimately proved successful. Naval bombardment had effectively suppressed many of the German strongpoints. However, the British encountered heavily fortified positions in the town of Lahamo, which caused significant casualties. Despite the initial setbacks, the British infantry, supported by specialized armored vehicles designed to overcome beach obstacles, fought their way through the German defenses. They cleared minefields, destroyed bunkers, and pushed inland, securing key objectives and linking up with Canadian forces advancing from Juno Beach. The Canadian landings on Juno Beach were met with determined German resistance. The beaches were heavily mined, and the German defenders were well entrenched in coastal fortifications. The initial assault waves suffered heavy casualties, as they struggled to overcome the obstacles and the intense enemy fire. However, the Canadian troops, displaying remarkable courage and determination, fought their way ashore. They used their Bren light machine guns and mortars effectively, and with the support of British tanks that had landed, they systematically cleared the German defenses. By the end of the day, the Canadians had made significant progress inland, advancing further than any other Allied division. The easternmost landing zone, Sword Beach, was assaulted by British forces. They faced strong German defenses, including artillery batteries and well-placed machine gun nests.
The initial waves of infantry encountered heavy fire as they landed. Despite the resistance, the British troops, supported by naval gunfire and specialized armor, fought their way off the beach. They secured key towns and began to push inland, aiming to capture Cannes, a major strategic objective. They also linked up with British paratroopers, who had secured the vital Pegasus Bridge earlier in the night. While Omaha Beach became synonymous with the brutal cost of the D-Day landings, the assaults on the other 4 beaches, though facing their own unique challenges and levels of resistance, were ultimately successful. The paratrooper and glider landings played a crucial role in softening up German defenses and securing key terrain inland, particularly on Utah and Sword beaches. The British and Canadian forces on Gold, Juno and Sword beaches encountered strong German opposition, but displayed remarkable tenacity and fighting spirit. The specialized armored vehicles, such as the Churchill AVRE Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers, with its petard mortar, designed to destroy concrete bunkers, proved invaluable in overcoming the heavily fortified coastal defenses. The success on these beaches was crucial for the overall Allied plan. Securing these flanks ensured that the German forces could not easily outflank the American landings on Omaha and Utah. It also allowed for the establishment of a continuous Allied front along the Normandy coast, creating a vital bridgehead for the massive buildup of troops and supplies that would follow. The coordination between naval gunfire support, aerial bombing though sometimes inaccurate, and the ground troops was essential, albeit imperfect. Naval destroyers and cruisers provided crucial fire support, targeting German strongpoints and helping to suppress enemy fire. The lessons learned from previous amphibious operations were evident in the improved landing craft and the overall planning and execution of these assaults. While each beach presented its own unique hell, the bravery and determination of the Allied soldiers ultimately prevailed, securing the vital foothold in Normandy that would be essential for the liberation of Western Europe. Of Normandy, once idyllic, are now scarred by the ravages of war. Tank tracks churn through the mud, and the air is thick with the acrid smell of burnt-out vehicles and explosives. The dense network of bocage, ancient hedgerows growing atop earthen banks, often several feet thick and high, dominates the landscape. These natural fortifications, crisscrossed by narrow sunken lanes, provide ideal defensive positions for the German forces. American and British infantrymen, their uniforms now stained with mud and grime, cautiously advance along these treacherous lanes. The bocage offers little visibility, and every field, every corner, could conceal a hidden enemy. Sniper fire cracks through the air, and the sudden burst of machine gun fire can erupt from seemingly nowhere. Casualties mount steadily, as the Allies struggle to penetrate the German lines. Tanks attempting to navigate the bocage find themselves vulnerable to anti-tank ambushes. The high banks and narrow lanes restrict maneuverability, making them easy targets for panzerfausts and other anti-tank weapons. Destroyed tanks, their metal hulls twisted and blackened, litter the landscape, grim reminders of the fierce fighting. German soldiers, often veterans of the Eastern Front, exploit the terrain to their advantage. They dig in along the hedgerows, creating camouflaged firing positions, and using the dense vegetation for cover and concealment. They launch swift counterattacks from unexpected directions, exploiting gaps in the Allied lines. The battle for the bocage became a grinding war of attrition. The initial Allied optimism following the beach landings began to wane as they encountered the formidable defenses of the Norman countryside. The bocage effectively negated the Allies' superior firepower and mobility. Tanks, normally a decisive weapon, were often reduced to slow-moving targets in the narrow lanes. Infantry tactics had to be adapted to the unique challenges of the bocage. Soldiers learned to work in small teams, using grenades and close-quarters combat to clear enemy positions. They developed techniques for breaching the hedgerows, sometimes using tanks to blast holes through the thick banks, but these breaches often became killing zones. The fighting in the bocage was characterized by its intensity and the high number of casualties on both sides. Every field, every hedgerow, became a battleground. The close-quarters nature of the fighting meant that engagements were often brutal and personal. The lack of clear front lines and the constant threat of ambush created a climate of fear and uncertainty. The Allies struggled to find effective ways to overcome the German defenses in the bocage. Aerial bombing was often inaccurate, and risked hitting friendly forces.
Artillery barrages could damage the hedgerows, but often failed to dislodge the well-entrenched German troops. General Omar Bradley, the commander of the U.S. First Army, recognized the need for new tactics. He authorized the development and deployment of Rhino tanks, Sherman tanks, fitted with steel prongs designed to rip through the hedgerows. These modified tanks proved to be a valuable asset, allowing Allied forces to break through the Bocage more effectively and restore some of their mobility. Despite the challenges and the heavy losses, the Allied advance slowly continued. The sheer weight of Allied numbers and resources, combined with the relentless pressure on the German forces, gradually began to take its toll. The Bocage, while a formidable obstacle, could not indefinitely halt the Allied advance. The fighting was brutal and costly, but the Allies were determined to break through and liberate Normandy. The struggle for the Bocage underscored the fact that the D-Day landings were just the beginning of a long and arduous campaign. Weeks after the initial landings, the Allied forces have managed to secure a significant, albeit hard-won foothold in Normandy. The flow of troops and supplies across the beaches has increased steadily, despite continued German resistance and sporadic shelling. The Mulberry harbors are functioning, albeit under occasional attack, providing a vital lifeline for the advancing armies. The battle for Cannes, a key strategic objective, has been particularly fierce and protracted. British and Canadian forces have engaged in intense urban warfare, facing determined German panzer divisions. The city has been heavily damaged by bombing and shelling, and the fighting has been house to house, street by street. To the west, the American forces, having endured the horrors of Omaha and the brutal fighting in the Bocage, are now pushing south and west, aiming to cut off German forces and expand the Allied bridgehead. The Rhino tanks are proving their worth, allowing for more rapid movement through the dense hedgerows. The air over Normandy is now dominated by Allied aircraft. P-47 Thunderbolts and Hawker Typhoons roar overhead, providing close air support to ground troops and attacking German armor and supply convoys. The Luftwaffe is a shadow of its former self, unable to effectively challenge Allied air superiority. By July, the sheer weight of Allied numbers and firepower began to tell. The constant pressure on the German forces, coupled with the relentless Allied air attacks, was stretching their resources thin. The initial shock and surprise of the D-Day landings had worn off, but the Germans were now locked in a desperate struggle to contain the Allied advance and prevent a breakout. The capture of Cannes, in mid-July, after weeks of bitter fighting, was a significant victory for the British and Canadians, opening up the eastern flank of the Allied bridgehead. To the west, the American forces launched Operation Cobra, a massive offensive designed to break through the German lines south of Cannes. A concentrated aerial bombardment shattered the German front, allowing American armor and infantry to surge forward. Operation Cobra marked a turning point in the Battle of Normandy. The stalemate of the Bocage was broken, and the Allies began to advance rapidly across the open countryside. The German forces, weakened by weeks of intense fighting and unable to effectively counter the Allied offensive, were forced into a general retreat. The Allied advance inland threatened to encircle large numbers of German troops. The Battle of the Fallet Pocket, fought in August, resulted in the encirclement and heavy losses of a significant portion of the German 7th Army. This decisive victory effectively shattered the German defenses in Normandy and opened the way for the liberation of France. The storming of Normandy on D-Day was a pivotal moment in World War II. It marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany and Western Europe. The courage and sacrifice of the Allied soldiers who landed on those beaches, and the relentless fighting in the weeks that followed, turned the tide of the war. The hard-won gains in Normandy provided the Allies with the crucial bridgehead they needed to liberate France and ultimately defeat the Axis powers. The memory of D-Day serves as a powerful reminder of the human cost of war and the extraordinary bravery of those who fought for freedom. The beaches of Normandy remain a solemn testament to the day that changed the course of history.